So let's start by talking about what I like to affectionately call the 6 P's of step parenting. The first one ought to be pretty obvious to us. Prayer. Prayer. Of course, we need prayer. Anybody who's a parent, a step parent, foster parent, it doesn't matter what kind of parental influence you have. If you're trying to pour into the life of a child, you know you need prayer because we cannot control those little suckers. Can I get an amen? Amen. We love them like crazy. We are so invested in who they are and what they are becoming. We're invested in whether or not they come to know the Lord. We want good things for their life. And it's hard. I mean, parenting is a challenge. I just want to encourage you, bathe it all in prayer. Prayer keeps you humble so that we don't think too much of ourselves as parents. Praying together as husband and wife keep you humble together, which is a whole nother dynamic that I think is exceedingly powerful. When you're humble together on your knees before the Lord, that keeps your heart in submission to Him together. I mean, think about that little triangle for a second. Humble together before the God of the universe. That is a good posture to have. Asking His help. Lord, what do we do? That actually helps keep you connected as husband and wife on a certain spiritual level. We call that spiritual intimacy sometimes. It keeps you leaning on Him and looking to Him for His truth and His advice. Submission makes sure that you're following His truth and you're not trying to lead with your own personal truth of what you think is right and wrong and how you go about living your life. Let me just start by encouraging you to bathe the whole parenting process in prayer. The second P is partner. Partner. That really has to do with your relationship as the head of the household. I realize some of you are dating, some of you maybe are single parents and just beginning that dating process, maybe not dating at all, but you're here to learn. I'm so glad you're here. Others of you are really close to getting married. I've met a few of you, and maybe you're on the verge of engagement or already engaged and you're planning a wedding. Still, this principle applies. When you partner together, what you're saying to the world is, at that time when you walk down the aisle, and those of you that are married, when you walk down the aisle, you are making a declaration to yourself, to the world, your children, and everybody around you. Look, this relationship is exceedingly important. I'm now shifting all of my allegiance in life, except my ultimate allegiance to the God above. I'm shifting that to this person who is now my partner. And that relationship leads parenting. As I'm going to show you a little bit later tonight, how things get off kilter sometimes and how the parent-child relationships that predate the marriage can end up leading parenting, and that is problematic. But having your marriage be the primary relationship is so very important. In this new book, Gary and I say that marriage in a blended family is the first and last motivator of everybody else in the picture to get on board with the whole idea of becoming family. Let me explain what I mean by that. It's the first motivator. Well, that's pretty obvious. If the two of you didn't fall in love and start dating and say, we're going to live together and we're going to have a life together, none of the other people would do it. The kids wouldn't get together and go, let's be a family. That would not happen, right? So your relationship is clearly the first motivator to them figuring out how now do we become family with one another. It is also the last motivator. What I mean by that is in the case of struggle or difficulty or conflict or things are rough and there's a few relationships within your home are good, but there's a lot of things that aren't going good and everybody feels like, you know what, it's safer to just go back over to our corner. Let's go back, mom or dad. Let's go back to where we were. Let's be a family, just us again. The temptation in the middle of stress in a blended family is to pull apart, not merge together. By the way, this is a common struggle the first few years of every step family. There are forces that are trying to move you together. That's your intentionality, that's your heart, that's your love, that's your effort to bond and build relationship. And there are also forces that are trying to pull you apart. That's the unknown. That's the what do we do? By the way, it just occurs to me as we're looking at this whole coronavirus anxiety in our world, what's happening? We're all retreating back into our homes. We're not assembling with other people, right? All of a sudden it's like, let's go back to what's safe. The same dynamic happens in step families when there's conflict and when there's stress. And the process of merging is stressful inherently, so there's always some forces working against one another. And in the case where a kid is like, why should I invest? Why should I put me in with you guys? The last motivator, the thing that ultimately makes them say, I guess I have to figure this out, is your marriage. Because if this kid is looking at dad's marriage to her and he's saying, you know what, my dad's not happy. I can tell my dad's not in love. I can tell she doesn't treat him well. I can tell he's confused about his marriage. I can tell I don't know if he's going to stay in this. And you know what? If I were advising him, I might advise him to get out. Why will that kid have any motivation whatsoever to merge? They won't. They'll go back to where it's safe and they'll stay there. But a marriage that says, a dad who says to that son, I'm not going anywhere. This marriage is for life. Puts his son in a position where he must now figure out, how now do I do life in light of all these other connections and relationships? Because dad and his wife are solid. I may not like it. I may not be motivated to want to merge, but I have to. Now that's the worst case scenario. It's the first and the last motivator for children, former spouses, parents, former in-laws, your current in-laws, your grandparents, for all of them to be motivated to figure out how to be part of the family identity. Your marriage is what makes that happen. Partnering is exceedingly important. I have a coworker, a guy that works with me at Family Life. By the way, if you're not familiar with Family Life, we're a very large marriage and family organization. We work all over the U.S. and all over the world. We're in 105 countries. We have a national radio broadcast. We produce resources and curriculum materials for churches on a regular basis. And I run the division called Family Life Blended. We create all kinds of resources and tools and materials for blended family couples, and we equip churches to be able to do ministry. If you're interested in any of that, come look us up, all right? FamilyLife.com/blended. I was working with a guy one day, and we were having a conversation, getting to know each other. He was kind of new to the ministry, and I said, tell me about yourself. He said, well, I grew up in a blended family, just like, the families you work with. I said, oh, yeah. He said, yeah, it was I had a great stepdad. He came into my life when I was about 5. My parents had divorced, and I liked him, and we got along, but I never respected him. And I had a little whiplash in that moment. It's like, whoa, hold on, time out. You liked him, you loved him, you call him. Yeah, I think he called him dad pretty early on in their journey together. But all of a sudden, he says, I never respect him. I was like, all right, time out, explain that to me. And he said, it's pretty easy. My mom made it very clear to us and to him, soon after they got married, that if they ever had any difficulties and she ever felt like her kids, us, were not being treated fairly by him, she would take us and leave. And listen to what that did in his mind as a 5-year-old. This means I don't have to respect him. Mom doesn't respect him. I don't have to either. Is that going to undercut stepdad's ability to get his socks picked up? Is that going to undercut stepdad's ability to be a leader in his home? Is that going to undercut everything he tries to put on as a stepdad who is loving this child? You bet it does. See, partnering, everything flows out of your marriage relationship to help the family merge and to help the step-parent find their footing in the home. P number 3, pursue. At some point, step-parents, you got to pursue those kids and build a relationship with them. Now, it depends on where you are tonight in terms of what you'll hear. Some of you just are in the beginning process of that. Others of you are somewhere in the middle, like you've got some good stuff going, and some of you are way down at the end, and you're reaping those rewards of all the time and energy that you've invested. So let me just kind of offer a little bit that may influence wherever you are. If you're at the beginning of this process, obviously you want to start by building a relationship around things you have in common with this child. Find what they're good at, what their interests are, and try to step into that world a little bit. Find your common ground, and then develop that as you go. Essentially what you're doing is building trust. You're building trust. The 5 love languages, you guys familiar with that? Anybody in here ever read that book? Of course you're familiar with that, right? There's some key, simple principles in that book. Essentially, it's about setting yourself aside and learning how to love somebody with their, quote, language, as Gary likes to say, in a way that connects to their heart, that really, really touches their heart and tells them in a way that they really hear that you love them, that you care for them, that they're important to you. You value who they are, in your life. That's all based on trust. Can you imagine the conversation I had with Gary one day? We're friends, colleagues. We'd worked together a few times. We'd been around each other some. We'd had some good conversation. And he's one of my heroes. Can you imagine the day I had to sit down with him and go, okay, the 5 Love Languages book, the main one, has sold 14 million copies in English, and it's in 50 languages. And you've written the parenting book, the teenage book, the military version, the woman's version, the men's version. I have no idea how many of those copies those have sold. And oh, by the way, Gary, you missed something. I was scared to death to even utter those words. Like, I think there's a reason we need to write one together. And you know what? He's so humble. He's such a cool guy. He goes, you know what? I think you're right. I've always wanted to do something for blended families. So let's get together on that. And we began to talk it through. And I said, your principles are fabulous, but they're all based on trust. If my wife and I love each other, trust each other, and I then speak her love language, quality time, and I spend time with her and I'm focused and she feels me being with her and in tune and the phone is down and no distractions and Ron's doing little things to show her how valuable she is, that works assuming she wants me to love her that way. It assumes she actually trusts me enough to love her in a way that's genuine and authentic and feels right, and then it adds up to something important and special to her. But if she doesn't trust me, if she doesn't know me, why would she want me to love her that way? Imagine a step-parent trying to pursue a relationship with a stepchild, and the stepchild's kind of like, whatever, I don't need you. The step-parent's trying, you're trying. And the kid's like, I don't need you. And you even know their love language, and you go out of your way to, but if they don't want it, what good is it? As a matter of fact, we polled a bunch of people and we asked them, like, does that ever backfire? Absolutely it backfires. Spending time with this kid, they don't want to spend time with me. I feel like I'm just wasting my time. And then I get frustrated and feel like they're pushing back and I feel rejected. You bet it backfired. What's going on there? The issue is who wants to have a relationship with whom. So as you pursue a relationship, you have to, that's our next P, pace, P-A-C-E. You have to pace with the child. Their level of openness to you will dictate how quickly and to what degree you will able to enter into their heart. Let me give you an illustration that this makes sense to everybody here. Even as I say it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So imagine if I give you an assignment. I want you to go this next week. Somebody just moved in, your neighbors. You got new neighbors 2 doors down. You don't know them. I want you to go make friends with them, all right? Spend a little time, get to know them, make friends. How would you not go about making friends? My guess is if you went 2 doors down and knocked on their door and they said, hello, who is it? My guess is you would not say, hey, I'm your new best friend, open up, I'm coming in. And if they cracked the door open just to see who the loon is outside that door, you would push the door open, shove your way into their living room, go to their kitchen, start getting food out of the refrigerator, saying, I'm your new best friend, we're in love, giving them a bear hug. No, you're going to jail. That's what's happening. Why can you not do that? Because they don't trust you. They don't know you. They don't know what you're about. There's no relationship there. You haven't invested the time or the energy. Clearly, you can't do that. As a step-parent on day 1, you're trying to make a friend. Go knock on the door. And if the child on the other side of the door just talks to you through the door and they're unwilling to crack the door open, guess what? That's as good as it gets for today. It's not the end of the story. But today, you got to meet them where they are. You have to pace with where they are. So what does that mean? You talk through the door. Well, that just feels lousy. I know it does. Like, that's hard. And I hope you had a friend and a spouse that you can talk to about this and kind of complain about off to the side. But when you come back up on that doorstep, you better just talk softly through the door. Because if you get on the other side of the door and start bang, come on, let me in. I'm a nice person. They're putting a double lock on the inside, right? They're definitely not letting you in. You have to pace. And then if they crack that little door open, you could see an eyeball. That's all you got is one eyeball right there. You talk to the eyeball. And you figure out what the eyeball enjoys in life, and you find some interest in something you have in common, and you start talking about football or baseball or the fashion or music, or you find whatever you have in common and you start building with that. And over time, you build a little bit of a connection, enough that they on the other side start to crack the door open. You get the picture, right? See, really what we're talking about here with pace is what I like to call the dance of want. The dance of want. Like, who wants the relationship more? Do both parties want? If you find a new friend, and you ever had one of those relationships like you just connected out of nowhere? Like, clearly both of you were looking for a friend and were open to that, and you have a lot in common, and bam, it took off and it ran fast. Some of us have had romance relationships like that. It ran fast, right? Others where you wanted a little more from them than they wanted from you, and you had to work on them a while before they were willing to date you. Your want was higher than their want. But then ultimately you got to a place where they said, okay, I'll go out with you. And you went out on a date and you enjoyed it. And you were like, okay, this was good. But now I want another date. I wonder if they want another date. I don't know. Maybe not. And you got a little anxiety about it. You wanted more than they wanted. You with me? And then you break through that barrier and you ask, and she says yes, and she wants to go out again. And pretty soon you're going out a number of times. And then you're beginning to think, I think I could love you and say I love you. But do I say that? Because what if they don't want me to say that? And what if they feel weird about that? And you want, but you don't know if they want. And then you break through that barrier and you both said, I love you. And then you're dating and you're beginning to think about marriage and you're like, I don't know. Do you think maybe the other person is feeling? And the dance of want continues. And then you get down on one knee and you're thinking, I think she's going to say yes, but I'm not positive she's going to say yes. And you ask the question and she says yes. And the want is equal. And you get married, and thank the Lord, as soon as you get married, you never have to worry about the dance of want ever again. How come I'm the one who always asks you how your day was, and you don't really ask me about my day? Do you not want me? Not that I'm keeping score or anything, but the last 495 times we've had sex, I started it, so do you not want me? See, that's kind of about wanting sex. It's kind of about sexual desire, but it's really about, do you want me? See, the dance of want doesn't go away. It is the anxiety in our hearts on a regular basis. Same dance is going on between an adult and a child in a step-parent, stepchild situation. You're highly motivated toward love. You want them to want you to love them. You want a connection. You want them to feel like family, like you feel like family. And your motivation is high, and their want and their motivation is kind of like, And some kids have high motivation and they equal you, and you just have a relationship that takes off and it goes fast. And then there's another child in the same home who's got a moderate level of want, and you connect around some things and it's just weird at other times. But then there's that other child and it's awkward, it's weird. You're knocking on the door, they're not letting you in. All three situations, you've got to pace. The kid who opens the door says, come on in, you're my new BFF, go in, enjoy it. The kid who says, I'll give you one eyeball. Okay, it's a start. We got to work with that. The kid who says, nope, stay on the outside of the room. You got to pace where they are, because that's the only way they will find enough trust to let you move in a little bit deeper. That brings us to our next P, patience. Now, even as I say this, it feels inadequate. It's hard. It is so hard to be patient. Desperation for a relationship is the enemy of stepfamily merging and bonding. When your want is so high and not matched by their want, and you're trying to force it on them, you end up doing all the wrong things. And it all backfires because they look at you as somebody who is overbearing and doesn't get the hint and can't be trusted. If they can't trust you, they're not going to let you in. It's hard, but you got to be patient. I did say last year in this seminar, and if you've read anything I've ever written, any of the 8 books that we've produced or the video series or anything related to any of that, you've heard me say you cook a stepfamily in a crock pot. It takes a long time, but man, is it good when you get there. I did not say Instapot. Just want to make sure you got that right. I said crock pot. 6, 7 hours. Blended families out on average take 5 to 7 years to really find their sense of identity and togetherness, and routine is settled and traditions have been established and we all have a sense of connectedness. Is there every ingredient kind of merged into that same crock-potting experience the same? No. But for the most part, that's a process. And so some of you just heard me go, 5 to 7, what? Dear God, oh no. That's just average, right? Because it's a merging process. There are people, personalities, there's traditions, there's hurt and loss, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And you got to wait for ingredients to warm up so they can soften, and then they merge. That's what happens in a crock pot. A little bit of heat helps people warm up, they soften, and now they start sharing of themselves. Warming up is about getting to know you, finding what we have in common. Softening is I learn to trust you a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. So I'm opening the door a little bit more on our relationship. And I begin to share a little of me, and you share a little more of you, and then the relationship begins to grow at that point, and we continue forward in that process. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So we have progress, and then fall back, and then we gain a little, and we lose a little. But at the end of the day, we're cooking. Patience is your friend, not desperation. Persistence, the last P. Persistence is, doggone it, I'm not giving up. We're going to stay in this game. We're going to keep working. I'm going to do what I can. I cannot force relationship on you if you're not open to it, but I can continue to stand on the front porch. And that's really difficult because some of you have felt that to the point where you're just like ready to walk off and leave, and you don't want to stand there and knock anymore. And I understand taking a little break every now and then and stepping away from that, but then come back. Because if you don't come back, there's no way you can ever build a relationship. Don't be a bull in a china closet. Don't do that. Everything gets broken. Be stubborn. Stubborn in love. Stubbornly persistent to not go away, not to be chased away, especially when situations are difficult. Crockpots use heat, a little bit of heat. It's not a high heat, but they definitely use heat. But it's a long, drawn-out, low heat that eventually softens ingredients. I feel the need to just wrap back around one more time and say prayer. Yeah, prayer. Prayer is important in this whole process because you don't know when to zig or zag sometimes. You don't know whether it's time to move in a little tighter or back up a little bit more. And sometimes you move in and, whoop, that didn't work. All right, regroup. What are we going to do? Like, it's a live and learn. God, help me. Move us through this process. Lord, we trust you as best we can. We're going to learn from mistakes, but we're going to continue forward as best we can. And that really makes a difference when you bathe that whole process in prayer. Now, I said a minute ago, what if you're kind of dealing with the rejection thing? And I just want to address that for a few minutes here, just because I know some of you are, not everybody. It certainly isn't necessary to every stepfamily experience, so please don't hear me say that. But I know some of you are feeling that. So let's just talk around it for just a few minutes. First of all, let me just say, make sure that it really is rejection. Make sure that it really is rejection. Sometimes I don't think it is rejection. I think kids just feel a little awkward. Sometimes they just feel unsure of you, meaning they're just not sure that they know you well enough, they trust you, that they just don't quite have the whole picture. Sometimes, yes, there's a loyalty conflict going on. I like you, stepdad, that's my problem. I love my dad. And the last thing I want my dad to think is that I like you more or love you more. Somehow I'm getting rid of him and replacing you. I don't want dad to think that. So I kind of just play it cool with you. That makes sense, right? That makes sense if you're a kid, because that dad relationship is special and primary, and you don't want to ever jeopardize that relationship. And so you're trying to figure out the territory. That's not rejection. But if you jump to a conclusion and go, yeah, this guy got nothing for me, forget it. Well, then you made it function like rejection. And that would be really unfortunate, because it's just a matter of them figuring out the territory, and a little more time and things might have lightened up. But I do want to say, yeah, sometimes there's a kid who just has very low motivation. You're high motivated. They're low motivation to move into a relationship with you. What's behind that? Loss, sadness, For some kids, you're the one who's there, but the parent they really want a relationship with is not there. How can I love you, Mom, when my real mom is not here? She's not showing up. She's disappeared. She's MIA. Whatever that experience is, that's really hard for them to then just bring you into their, so loss sometimes get in the way. Hurt. Sometimes kids, feel the hurt of what's happened in the past, and they're carrying that with them, and they're going to blame somebody, and often step-parents, kind of this easy scapegoat for that hurt, for that angst and that pain. Loyalty, confusion, we talked about that a little bit. Sometimes you've earned the rejection. What I mean by that is you came on too strong, you tried to right all the wrongs in this kid's life by fixing them, and you did it before you'd kind of earned their respect. And so, maybe you just got a little quirk to your personality, and you got a temper, and they've just seen you as somebody they're not sure they can trust. Sometimes we earn that rejection. Whatever that process is, 2 quick things I want to suggest to you that you can do. The first one is lead with love. Lead with love. Have you guys ever thought about the question that Jesus asked? You remember the parable of the prodigal son? Not Luke chapter 10, the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? This teacher comes to Jesus and he says, who's my neighbor? They're talking about fulfilling the law, and this guy wants to know who he has to treat as his neighbor and be kind to. And so he says, who is my neighbor? And Jesus tells him the story about this guy, and falls by the wayside, and 3 people pass by him. You know the story, right? Parable of the Good Samaritan. When Jesus gets to the end of the story, have you ever noticed the question that Jesus asked back to the teacher? Remember, the question initially was, who is my neighbor? Who are the people I have to treat nice? Jesus' question back to him is different. His question is, who proved to be the neighbor? Which one of these 3 guys ended up being neighborly? It's a different question. The man trying to justify his own actions in his own life was saying, who do I have to be nice to? Jesus is saying, who was neighborly to someone even when they didn't deserve it? That's a better question. That's a totally different question. All of a sudden, Jesus is saying, are you willing to lead with love, even when in an unknown relationship? I think that is a marvelous principle for all of us when we find ourselves in a difficult situation with anybody. Can you continue to try to love them? Doesn't mean you become milquetoast, you don't have any boundaries. It doesn't mean any of that from a parenting standpoint, but it just means that you continue to be persistent, to lean into their life and try to build a relationship over time. The other thing I want you to do is listen for love. As we talked with people trying to implement the 5 love languages in their blended families, one of the things that we discovered is that sometimes kids are saying, I love you to a step-parent, and the step-parents just never picked up on it because of how the child is saying it. One guy was telling me he said, yeah, my stepson's love language is words of affirmation, but he never, I would try to love him that way, and he just never received it. Like, it just felt like the wall was up. And he said, and I never really got anything back from him. Like, he never complimented me or said anything nice or, said thank you for stuff. And I just felt like he didn't care. And then he said, I started thinking about all this stuff you guys have been talking about. And all of a sudden I realized, but I do hear my stepson telling other people he appreciates what I do for him. I've heard him a number of times introduce me to his friends and say, he helps me fix my truck. He was there for me when so-and-so happened, and he stood by my side. He said, he'll never say it to me, but he'll say it to others about me. Right. Why is that? Sometimes kids can't just quite bring themselves to have that direct communication with you because of a loyalty to another parent or some concern that they have, whatever that is for them, but they'll find a way to communicate at least some respect or some care. Sometimes you just got to listen in creative ways for the indirect rather than the direct. Learn to listen with your eyes. Do they do kind things for you? Your watch, do they ever spend time with you? Your arms, do they ever hug you or show some sort of physical connection? Your hands, do they ever provide gifts? Do they ever do something kind for you? Try to listen with those avenues to what they're trying to say indirectly, and you might discover that there's a little bit more there than you thought. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to give you a little time to just absorb some of the things that you have heard. So here's a few questions I want you to just spend a few minutes doing at your tables. Just take a few minutes, talk to the people at your table. What jumped out at you and what you just heard and why? What's the application for your specific situation? What's happening well when your parenting unity is strong? In other words, when you really feel connected as husband and wife, as parent, step-parent, what's happening that's making that connection strong? And what's happening when that connection is not so strong? You can decide which one of those you want to share. And then maybe you have some leading with love or some listening for love observations. We'll give you a few minutes to work on that. Ready, set, go. I'm going to tell you about a couple of opportunities. I mentioned Family Life does a Weekend to Remember Marriage conference every year. It's going to be in Atlanta, May 1 through 3. At least we think it'll be in Atlanta, May 1 through 3. We've got a rep here, Chris, over here in a blue shirt. Wave your hand. If you want to know more about that event, he's got brochures and I think there's a coupon in there. There's some information in there that you can get. So check with him if you want to know more about the event, or just go to familylife.com. The event that I was telling you about that's coming up for blended family couples is called Blended and Blessed. It's going to be Saturday, April 25th, live streamed from Houston, but you can be anywhere in the world. You get to stay home and be a part of this. We are encouraging people to come together in small groups or in churches. Churches can host it. Just go to blendedandblessed.com and you can learn all about that event. It's new every year. And we have a podcast, Family Life Blended. If you guys don't know about our podcast, open your phone right now. Get your app out. Open the app. Just go and search Family Life Blended with Ron Deal, and you'll find it. Let me tell you, I mean, you're going to be in traffic for an hour and a half, and you might as well listen to something helpful. We have done podcasts on feeling stuck between your spouse and your kids, on overcoming betrayal in the past relationship or the present relationship, on helping angry kids in stepfamilies, custody battle situations, childless stepmom. If you're a childless stepmom, there's some unique factors that go on around that. Stepfamily finances, growing up in a blended family. What's that like? About to blend. We did a podcast for couples that are about to get married. How do you prepare and move towards life together? The holidays. I've got a podcast coming up in a couple of months with Julie Slattery where we talked about sex and what's unique about sexuality in a second or third marriage situation. Bonus parenting with Stephen Arterburn and his wife Misty. That's another one that's coming up real soon. If any of that is of interest to you, check out the podcast. We'd love to have you listen. Now I want to spend a little time talking about concepts related to kids and understanding kids. That'll help you be a better parent. So we need to talk about three things: attachment, loss, and loyalty. And the way we're going to do this is you're going to do a little table talk discussion, as we just were. If you'll open up in your handout there's some directions about what we want you to do. Essentially, we want you to brainstorm what it's like to be a kid. Jump into their shoes for a few minutes, and just quickly as you can, popcorn around your table and come up with as many fears, stressors, concerns. What are the things that you think are going on inside the heart and mind of a child that they have to cope with, all right? And just share that as quickly as you can at your table. By the way, I see some folks that are just by themselves. Go join a table, be with some others. The first thing I want you to do as a group, though, as you get started, here's your first assignment. Pick a recorder. Somebody at your table whose job it is to write everything down so you can capture that and share it with the rest of us here in a few minutes. A very important role. Got it? Pick a recorder and then brainstorm as fast as you can. Ready, set, go. Real quick, I'm going to let you continue your assignment in just a minute, but let me ask you to do something. Turn your notes over to the back page. Some of you on the very back page on the lower right corner have a little smiley face. Everybody with a smiley face on your handout, come to this side of the room and meet me over here in the corner right now. Everybody else, keep going with your assignment. Let me ask you to just push pause on your discussion right where you're at. And let me just say something to those that may be watching on video at some point. What you may not have realized just happened is they were working in groups, and at one point we pulled people out of each group, and I took them off to the side, and I asked them to go to a different group. My guess is you guys have a great list in front of you of fears, stressors, and concerns that kids and stepfamilies experience, but I don't really care. What I do care about is those of you that got moved from one group to another, we want you to teach us what it feels like to get moved. You just stepped into the shoes of children in a very real way. In your group dynamic, experienced attachment, loss, and loyalty. We got 2 microphones, one right over here and one right over here. I want all the kids. I can't do everybody, but if you got something to say about what your experience was getting pulled out of your group and moving to a new group, if you'd be willing to just share a little bit of what that was like, run up to a microphone, just start going up to the mics, and we want to hear from you what you felt, what you heard, what you thought, what you experienced. There's a mic over. Go ahead. Yep. Yes.
Okay, so mine was slightly jaded because I know the person that I joined the group of, and I got no. Don't come to my group.
You got no?
I got the overbearing stepfather.
Oh my goodness!
Yes.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yes.
So did they welcome you or no?
No, it was no.
All right, and how did that feel?
It hurt my feelings.
Big fat lip right there. Put the lip out. It hurt my feelings. Yeah, and that didn't feel good, did it?
No.
What did you do? Did you do something to try to fit in? Did you just sit back at that point and go, man, they don't want me here. I'm not going to even try?
No, just tried to talk around the table.
Okay, good. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Somebody else? Yes.
So at first when you asked, I was like, oh gosh, no, it was fine. We met new friends. And then I was thinking, my first concern was, but I didn't bring my things.
Okay. You didn't have your stuff.
I've heard that from
and
my
that's a
kids
comfort
too,
thing, right? To have your things.
Don't have my things.
Don't have my things. It's an inconvenience for you, and it's a little unsettling.
Right.
Excellent. Good. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, next.
I felt uprooted, like we had just established a rapport.
Yeah.
And then now I'm over here, now I got to start over again.
Yeah.
So I'm like, who are these people?
Exactly.
Okay, let me listen and figure out.
Okay, so stay right there for a second. So this gentleman is helping us understand insiders and outsiders, as did the first woman who talked over here. At your group, where you've kind of established some coherency and a little bit of relationship, and you've got a rhythm going in your assignment, you're an insider with those people. And then you get uprooted and you move to another group where you're the outsider. Like, you don't know where you fit, you don't know where you belong, you don't know what your role is, you're not sure what your function is. Right? This happens with kids on a regular basis. It's what happens. This is the outsider step-parent thing, trying to find your way in. Where do I fit? How do I move into this space? Do they want me here? Do they not want me here? I'm kind of laying back. Sometimes kids who are huge, extroverted, large and in charge children in one home are very remote and distant in another home because it's a totally different dynamic for them. Some kids are the firstborn in one home and they're a middle or a last in the other home. That calls for different roles from them. They go into what we call the birth order blender every other weekend and 6 weeks in the summer. And they have to make adjustments. And there's a pecking order that has to be worked out with all their other siblings, right? That's something that they're managing on an ongoing basis. As I recall, we were over here. I asked everybody to go to a different group. By the way, for those of you that were not called over to the side, I didn't explain to them what was going on. I just said, don't ask any questions. Go to a different group. He asked a question. Can I go back and get my wife? And I said, no. And the look on your face was like, I am in so much trouble right now. How did that feel to you couldn't go back and get her and go and have her be with you? What was that like for you?
I was by myself.
Yeah,
so
you were all alone.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to do it by myself.
Yeah. Think about kids, right? They move from one place to the next, and sometimes they have somebody with them, and sometimes they're stepping into a different place where they're alone or they feel alone. They're not really alone, but they feel alone, right? Just because something's changed for them. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You go back to your second group. Don't go back to your wife now. Yes, sir, over here.
I was lucky and my wife got a smiley face too, so we went together.
So you went together.
Yes.
You had a partner. That's good.
But we left a nice little small table and went and joined a bigger table, and then we looked back and saw that our smaller table was by themselves still. So we joined a bigger discussion in a bigger group, and we fit in, and then we noticed that our smaller table didn't have that connection. So it made
Did you
us
feel
kind
of guilty about that?
A little bit.
Yeah. You were worried about them.
We were.
They're kind of pathetic without you, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, we were the facilitators, so they didn't know what to do. So.
Yeah, you were the facilitator.
Yeah.
So you were like, we took all of the reporting and the recording, and
we did. We took everything with us and just left them over there.
You know what? We're going to hear from somebody in that group in just a minute, but I'm curious, what was your experience as the recorder, the person who's got a task, and you're responsible for that, and then you go to a bigger group? Did they already have a reporter?
They did. They had a reporter, and they had some different ideas that we had, things we didn't think about.
So what did you do? What did you do with your role? I thought I had a job. What did you do with that?
We just read off of ours and blended them together.
Yeah. Did you try to figure out who the real reporter was going to be at this point?
No.
Yeah, good, because that would have been a battle. Battle of wills. Thank you very much for sharing. Yeah. Yes, sir.
My introvert instantly kicked in.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh, why do I have to do
Yeah,
this?
I was forcing you to move into territory you're not comfortable with.
Exactly. But then I moved into the place, well, I guess I have to. I went back to my wife, and I wanted to tell her, look, you need to take this because I don't want to go.
And did you?
I didn't.
No.
I wanted to.
You found your courage? You found a new group?
Yeah.
Good for you. Okay, I appreciate this so much, that transparency. Think about it. Some kids are just introverted. They're not adventure seekers. They're not interested in making new friends. They've got one friend in the world, and you ain't it. They don't need another friend. Their kids are those flaming extroverts that have never met a stranger, right? They love adventure and excitement. New house, cool, let's have some fun, right? And their personality just lends them the ability to make those adjustments on the fly. And it's just easy for them. And then there's that other sibling right next to them that really struggles and has a hard time. Thank you. You can have a seat. Yes, ma'am.
It was interesting. At first, I thought I didn't have anything to say. And then I actually verbalized to them. I said, I don't even really know what I'm doing here. So I was a little bit confused.
That's the point.
And then also in the back of my mind, the only thing that I was thinking was, I wonder what my boyfriend's thinking right now because he doesn't know what I'm doing, which would obviously be, you know, their other parent.
Right.
Kind of wondering what's going on. So,
Imagine, anybody here ever experienced anything, any unwanted change? Like in the last week? School closing, I don't have a job, do I get on that plane, do I not go to this event in Atlanta? That was my day, right? Like unwanted change forced upon you by other people, and you're confused about what it means for you. You don't know your role. You have to pay the price, if you will, of other people's. By the way, who am I in this whole little scenario, this little game? I'm the judge who lowered the mallet and told kids where to go and when and what they have to do. And she's confused by that. Of course she is. And she's split in two. Listen to that. Part of me's here trying to figure out life. Part of me's where my boyfriend is, and I'm wondering how he's doing. Right? So she's not all here. You ever been talking to a kid and you felt like you didn't have all of them because part of them is still somewhere else? Of course it is. They're worried about those people. They're mindful of those people. They care about those people too. And imagine if, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll come back to that in just a second. Yes, sir.
I will say, luckily, my wife and I both got the smiley sticker, so we both got to do this together. Now, I will tell you that we knew what was going on because we were fortunate enough years ago to go to your blended family retreat at Berry College.
All right.
And I want you to know that that changed the trajectory of our marriage for the better. And we had the exercise when we do it outside, so we knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
And we got to explain to the new table that we were.
You kind of helped them out a little bit.
Helped them out a little bit, but I do want you to know that the trajectory of our marriage changed after we attended the blended family. And we want to thank you for that. Thank you.
I appreciate it. What I love about him is he was informed. He got Stepfamily smart, and he helped the new table out, right? He had goods. And we do that when we have a little bit of wisdom, right? It makes a big difference. Yes?
I didn't know what was going on, I have to say. So what I did is I was looking for somebody who I felt like maybe they'd accept me, maybe they'll welcome me in their group.
Yeah, who first will reach out to me and help me feel connected?
Kinda.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. You're looking for that one person to bring you in from being an outsider into becoming an insider because nobody likes to stay an outsider.
right.
I want to hear from somebody in a group. People were taken from your group or were brought to your group. What was your experience? Right? Run to the microphones. Let's get some feedback from folks, if you would. Taken from your group or brought to your group? What was your group experience or what was your experience about somebody showing up or somebody having to leave? Somebody? Thank you. We got some courage. Go right ahead.
I guess, it's starting all over, right? It's
Right.
like, what's your name? What's your story?
Exactly.
Who are you?
I don't
Trying
know.
to make him feel welcome because I felt they were kind of awkward coming in when we already had a bond.
She started knocking on the door. She's got a new neighbor, right? She's got to figure out how to build this relationship with this person on the other side she doesn't even know. All of a sudden, it gets really real. Yeah, good. What else? Anything else? Did they respond? Did they talk?
Yeah, so they each then told their story and their situation was.
Yeah, now I'm noticing
But
your
I lost
group.
the list. We didn't have a list at
Oh.
that point, so we
Kind of lost the. Now notice, while you were trying to get to know that person, you were not doing the task. You kind of lost momentum towards the purpose that you were tasked with, and now we have to divert over here and spend time. It does draw you away from the journey of life a little bit to pull back and begin to build new relationships. It takes some work.
starting over. And
Yeah.
I think all of us can relate here. It's you already kind of had it going for many years if you were
Yes.
married before, and now it's like, okay, here we go again.
That's
it's like
it.
you have to start all over
It's
again.
a new starting
It's going to
over.
take 5 to 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
So I'm one of those crazy extroverts that's never met a stranger, so I immediately try to make Debbie feel welcome and how can I get her into the group and assimilate her as fast as possible and get her into the conversation and all that stuff. So that's kind of what I was trying to do.
And so you're good at that, right? You get the skills, you get the gifting, you're an extrovert, and so you reach out and you try to help her feel a part. That's a great gift. Those kids and those parents and those people are very valuable to outsiders. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
So our experience was, first of all, Charles is like one of the least introverted people we've ever met. So
Okay.
when he announced himself being an introvert, we're like, wait, that's not the guy we met. And then the fact that he has 10 kids, we immediately deferred to his wisdom. We wanted to hear what he had to say. So
That's good. So all of a sudden there's a dynamic shift. Think about it. They had something going on in their group, and now we've got a new member who brings something to the table, and all of a sudden we're kind of oriented around that person.
Absolutely.
For a little bit of time. That sort of dynamic's happening sometimes in some scenarios. Yeah, we got one more behind you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for us, we were like, somebody came from the outside, took things away from us that we were comfortable with. We liked these people. Something out of our control was
Right.
changed.
Absolutely.
And, we liked the people that came to our table, but
still.
something was changed.
Did you hear a
that
big
was-
butt in there? I heard a big butt coming out. I did. Yeah.
I like big butts and I cannot lie.
That's right. And you cannot. Unwanted change. Somebody was taken from our group. A parent died. A marriage died. And therefore, my family died. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. By the way, new people come to the table eventually. So the loss from the past brought something nice in the future, but still that something nice is a reminder of what we lost. You can't have the sweet without the bitter. It always has two sides to it. And it changes stuff, and we didn't ask for any of it. Let's do part 2 of this little experiment, have a little fun with this. Everybody who got moved from one group to another, you now have to decide which group you prefer to stay with. And you can either stay in group 2 or you can go back to group 1. It's up to you. Ready, set, go. All right. Well, that was interesting. All right, let me have your attention. I have 3 boys. That's the only way I could ever get them to come. I learned how to whistle. Yeah, so why did everybody kind of erupt in laughter when I said choose? Do what? Custody arrangement. Exactly, right? I mean, you know, there's this nervous energy in the room because you're all laughing now. You have to choose, and I would hate to be you. Because immediately you know you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. How many of you went back to your original group? Raise your hand. Put your hands down. Anybody not go back to their original group? We got 1 or 2. That's interesting. I just hope your spouse is not waiting on you. Just saying. Okay, for those of you that went back to your original group, how many of you left group 2 with some sort of an apology? Either you said, sorry, don't take it personal, or with your eyes you were kind of like, don't you? Why do you apologize? I saw one person, somebody left your group and went back to group 1, and I saw her go, good riddance, go. We don't want you, something like that. Why would you apologize to those people in group 2? You don't want to hurt their feelings. Why do you care if you hurt their feelings?
They're people.
They're people. But you're not going home with them tonight, so what's the difference?
Not going home with that one either.
The point is, even in friendly environments, nobody wants to create loss for other people. And when you feel the loyalty bind of, I have to choose, I have to prefer, I have to extend and say, I like these more than I like those, I don't want to do that. I like everybody. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And we do that even with people you don't love. Imagine kids on an ongoing basis. Attachment. You just experienced all 3 of these things. Attachment is that connectedness. I feel like I belong. I'm an insider with this group. Now I'm an outsider. I don't feel attached. I don't know where I belong. I don't know what my place is. I don't know what to do with this. I feel confusion, loss. There's change, unwanted change. We've already had a bunch of unwanted change. We just had another unwanted change. What do I do with this? Loyalty. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. On a regular basis, kids are processing these things all the time. They are thinking about them even as adults. They don't want you to ask them to make choices. When you say, you can imagine a parent saying to a child, now you like my cake better than the cake they make over there, right? That's a loyalty request. Love us, show your preference for us over them. Now, that's pretty obvious. But also is a loyalty request when you do things that are much more subtle, but still send the message of prefer us over them. I know you went fishing, but he's not very good, is he? You hear the message? You didn't enjoy him, did you? Because we are still important. I'm still most important in your heart, right? So when you do that, you force a child into choosing, and they hate it. And they often go dim, withdraw, go inside themselves, try to figure out a way not to choose. This is also why, and by the way, kids make up the loyalty conflict. Like, even if you're not overtly asking them to choose, they have this embedded sense of, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, which is why you can't believe everything they tell you about the other home. Because it always runs through a filter of how you're going to hear it. It's like the 5-year-old who said to his stepmom one day, true story, hey, when I'm here with you at Dad's house, can I love you? And when I go to my mom's house, can I hate you? See, the kid gets it. He understands at the age of 5. He understands there's a game going on, a fight between the adults in my world. And so I'm going to love you while I'm here because I love you. That's genuine and authentic. But I'm going to skew that when my mom's around so she doesn't ever really believe or come to believe that I love you. So I'm going to hate you when I'm around her. Is that okay with you? He was just so innocent, he didn't know you're not supposed to actually say these things out loud. But that is the bind in action. When you, on the other hand, as an adult say, have a good time this weekend, you've just released them out of the tug of war, and all of a sudden they can be a kid, not an adult taking care of another adult. They can be a kid, and they can go and have a good time at the other home. It's so important. A stepmom who on Mother's Day says, you're with us this weekend. I'm so glad you're going to be with us, but if I were you, I'd really be upset. I'd rather be with my mom if I were you, and I totally get it. But I want to try to do everything I can. Can we arrange a time to FaceTime with her? Can I help you get a card? Can I make sure? When you step into their loss and identify with it and bring it up to the surface and say, your loss and your feelings about your mom are good and right and holy, and I'm in support of those things, you make a lot of positive statements. You say to the child, number one, you don't have to take care of me by pretending as if you're not sad. You don't have to take care of me in this moment. You get to just be a kid. I'm taking care of you. You also say, I'm not competing with your relationship with your mother. Your relationship with your mom is good, and I'm going to support that, and I'm not in competition with it. which makes you respectable. And the irony is when you enter into that attachment, loss, and loyalty place with a kid, it actually, on the other side of it, makes you somebody more attractive. Because you show yourself to be an adult who cares for themselves, not needing a child to do the caretaking for them. Respecting these spaces within children is helpful when it comes time to be parental. It also is helpful as you make transitions. Let me show you something up here on the screen. Here it comes. So let's just do a little case study here. So here's a biological mother, Angela, and her kids, right? And they are insiders. They came into this new marriage as insiders. They have history, and they've been through the foxhole of life together, and she's their mom, for crying out loud, and they're her kids. It's pretty evident. Now here's stepdad, right? He's an outsider. And one of the things they've got going on is they've got this rich tradition. This mother-child relationship has a rich tradition. In the book, we tell the story about Angela. She and her kids had a nightly ritual through the single-parent years. She would go into their bedroom, and they would lay down on the bed, and they would talk about the day, and it was connecting. And sometimes they were playing the games, but they were often just surviving life together. And it was a very significant time for all of them through the hard. After she marries Anthony, then they continued the ritual. By the way, I should back up and say the ritual was long and well-developed. It was at least 30 minutes every night she laid in bed and stared at the ceiling and talked with her kids. And often it was an hour and a half. So Anthony, as you can imagine, is happy and loves that they have such a great, close relationship. But at the same time, he's kind of looking for a little couple time at the end of the night. So he starts saying to his wife, when are you going to give me some time? And all of a sudden, she begins to feel what? Anxious about, oh no, do I have to choose between my kids and my husband? She feels a little guilty because she's not given him as much time, but she also feels torn between her kids and what they need. And she's getting a little irritated, that he's making all these requests. By the way, he's at work, he is a quality control person, and so he knows a lot about efficiency. So he started coaching his wife on how she could be more efficient with the nightly ritual time. The message being embedded in that, please be with me, not your kids, quite so long, which just made her kind of hold on to her kids a little bit tighter. The kids are picking up on this. They're feeling a little insecure and confused, and they're a little angry at their stepdad. What is stepdad feeling? Boy, am I left out. I am frustrated. I don't know how to break in. I don't know how to get time with my wife. This just feels to me like they're tight, and I'm kind of on the outside, and he's a little jealous of his stepkids as a result of all that. Now, here's what I want you to notice on the inside of the triangle. This mother-child relationship is, in effect, competing with their marriage. The attachment she has with her kids is good and holy and right, and she needs to continue that. Never break that off. And at the same time, the marriage is good and right and holy, and that's a new relationship. They need to strengthen that, right? But now those two relationships are competing with one another. Now watch this. When that competition is on, it sabotages his relationship with his stepchildren. It gets in the way. All of a sudden, they're the ones who are getting what I want to get. They've got their mother, I don't. And they're looking at him and they're going, he's trying to take mom from us. It's a really common dynamic. As a matter of fact, it can happen in other relationships as well. It could be step-grandmother. So here's mom and her kids, and that's tight and established, and step-grandmother's an outsider. She's trying to find her way in, and she kind of feels like she's left on the outside. It could be step-siblings that feel like they get left out on the outside. It could be the bio-dad who's in the other home, and he has a relationship with his kids, and he feels like the stepdad's trying to get in the way with that. You have a lot of interlocking triangles that are all making it challenging for the marriage to come through on top, because parenting flows out of marriage. So what do we do? Well, one of the things we want to try to do is, first of all, I want you to nurture that marriage relationship. That has to be something you're really deeply committed to. Partner. You got to be committed to that. And so Anthony and his wife Angela start having conversations about, all right, this ritual is good. The ritual is going to stay, but how do we modify this? How do we work with this? What are some things we can do? And stepdad had to do a lot of listening. He wasn't just able to just say, honey, you got to stop. No, he needed to do a lot of listening to hear mom's heart and understand what that meant to her and her concerns for her kids. And then she also needed to listen to her husband and figure out, you know what? But he's right. I need to figure out some space in my life and my schedule for him, because that's an important relationship as well. So they do a lot of conversation to make sure they're protecting their marriage. Now, here's what's interesting. The second thing that they're going to do is she's going to continue this relationship, but in the form of reassurance towards her kids. When she spends 30 minutes with them in the ritual at night, she is reassuring them, Mom is still here for you. The presence of my new husband does not mean you've completely lost me to him. But Mom has to begin to change the ritual so that it's not an hour and a half. Now notice, the couple had conversation around what the ritual is going to look like moving forward, but Mom's the one who has to make the change with her kids. Why is that? Because the weakest relationship in this whole scenario is that stepdad-stepchild relationship. That's the weakest one. Mom is the one who has a relationship with identity and strength and history in her relationship with her kids. She's the one who can make the change. She's the one who can say to the kids, all right, kids, it's time for me to go. Mom, stay a little bit longer. No, I'm going to go out and spend a little time with Anthony. You never did that before. You're right, I didn't. I wasn't married before. I am now. I realize this is a little difficult. Give me a hug. I'll see you in the morning. Good night. Mom's the one who's got to do that. Because here's the reason she's going to reassure her kids, even while she's trying to nurture her marriage. Those really are happening simultaneously. Here's what I want you to get about children: attachment, loss, and loyalty. They need to go through their relationship with their mom to get to their stepdad. Their stability in life is tied to Mom. So they do need reassurance that she is still here. And at the same time, she's the one who's setting boundaries on the relationship with them, because at that point, they still have her. That allows them to, in their heart, begin to incorporate the step-parent in their scenario. By the way, everything we're talking about, we're saying mom and stepdad. It could be dad and stepmom, right? We just interchange those. Kids need to go through that attachment with mom to get to that relationship with stepdad. Then he's pursuing them at a pace they can receive, knocking on the door. If they open, he walks through. If a child says, then he just tries to find what he can, and slowly but surely he's hoping over time that's going to begin to make a difference. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. Navigating to that takes a lot of work and effort. But you can begin to see how that we're pulling the pieces together rather than letting them push one another apart. Now, it's bonus when stepdad can say to his stepchildren, their relationship with their biological dad is good and right and holy, and I'm encouraging of that, and I speak well of their dad in front of them, and I try to support their relationship with him. Why? Because we don't want them holding on to him and him trying to block the stepdad's relationship with the kids. When you give a blessing instead of a curse, it works in your favor. It's a double bonus when bio dad says to his children, it's okay with me if you get along with your stepdad. Now, some of you just went like, yeah, right, well, that's going to ever happen. Because you have difficult ex-spouse, co-parenting relationships. Which leads me to a little conversation that we need to have, talking about toxic former spouse relationships. Let's talk about that for just a minute. What do you do if a former spouse in the other home is difficult and toxic, and maybe they're poisoning the kids against what's happening in your home? Or maybe they're living a life that is very different than the values that you're living. Let's talk around that for just a minute. I think there's a lot. Romans 12 has a lot to say about this whole thing. Let me just give you the context real quick. Romans 12, chapter 2. Paul says, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. He then goes on and tells them some ways to be transformed. Verse 3, he says, don't think highly of yourself. Put away pride. In verse 9, he says, let love be genuine. And then he turns the corner and he starts to talk about how you can be transformed as it relates to dealing with difficult people. Verse 14, let me read. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Stop the press. Are you kidding me? Come on. Really? That's difficult under any circumstance. Rise above. He continues. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty. That's again pride, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live peaceably with your former spouse, with your wife's former spouse. Look at verse 19. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. In other words, we leave that up to who? We leave that stuff up to God. We leave the judgment stuff up to God. We let payback up to God. We let God be the one who determines that and deals with that in his time and in his way. That's not my job. To the contrary, verse 20, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. That is so paradoxical. How in the world does that work? It's counterintuitive. For by so doing, you will heap burning coals on his head. That's an interesting little phrase, heap burning coals on his head. It's a phrase that essentially captured the idea is you can make something really, really hard, even hard metal, you can soften it with something warm or hot. You can warm up or soften a hard heart by just overwhelming them with good. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Leave judgment and revenge up to God. Repay evil with good as much as it's up to you. Do what you can to try to live peaceably with people. Your power is in overcoming evil with good. A lot of times you just feel so powerless with a former spouse who just creates havoc in your world and in your life. And they can. All they got to do is pick up the phone. Right? It's true. And so what do you do with that? Well, you try to do everything you can to try to be Jesus in that moment. Does that mean you become easily overrun and overwhelmed and you pay for everything? No, right? You can still have boundaries. You can still say in a polite way, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that. You can still be a person and stand up for your home, but do so in a way that's honorable and respectful and at least decent. Does that mean that they will all of a sudden be decent? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Some people stay hard-hearted. But some people are eventually overwhelmed by that goodness, and it can change some hearts. Let me coach you with a thing we've taught for years called the no threat message. I think this is very helpful. So let's just make a scenario. Let's say the biological mother in the other home, and you're the stepmom, and she is saying things about you that's just really poisoning your relationship with your stepchildren. One of the things that you can say to the biological mother, and I'll let you decide how you do this, whether it's in person, that's entirely up to you. That's very personal, and so that may be risky. But it might be through a text or a message or an email or something that's impersonal. You decide. But the message is essentially this. Look, I know that you're the mom and I'm not the mom. And I want you to know that I'm going to support you in front of your kids. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to speak well of you in front of your kids. If something's not right, we forgot to bring the math book, you let me know. I'm going to make it right. I will never speak ill of you in front of your children. You're the mom. I'm not the mom. I'm never going to try to take your place. I'm just honored to be able to try to offer a little blessing to your children. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day. The whole point of that message, no threat message, is I'm not a threat to you in your relationship with your kids. Now, bio mom may not believe it. She may say, yeah, right. I know what you're all about. She may cross her arms. She may have a posture against you that is hard and unyielding. It is what it is, but at least you begin to live out and show her through your life and practice, repaying evil with good, that you mean it. That can overwhelm some people. How long? I don't know. Everybody's a little different. But Paul tells us here, this is your power. You're not powerless against that person. Your power is repaying evil with good. I got a picture one day in an email, and it was that very scenario. It was a stepmother, and the picture had the woman holding a baby, and she was standing by another woman, and I didn't know who that was until I read the email. She said, my husband's former wife and I used to be at war. She did everything to try to sabotage who I was in the lives of her kids, and I heard you talk about the no threat message. She said, I couldn't even say it to her. I knew she would not even hear it from me, even if I sent it in a text or something. So I just kept saying it to her kids when they were in her house. I kept saying things like, I just really appreciate your mom. She's a great lady. She said, I wanted to treat her as if I was not a threat to her. And I hope that her kids would kind of take that back to her, that somehow they would share those stories and somehow it would make a difference in who she was. She said, it's now been 4 years, and this picture is me holding her new baby. This is my husband's ex-wife standing next to me. I'm holding her baby. She trusts me, and we get along well enough at this point in our life together that I'm holding her baby, and we are friendly when she drops off or when we pick up. She said, I just want you to know it works. It pays off. I have no idea if it'll work in every situation. Even Paul in this text says, some overcome others. It doesn't say all get overcome. In which case, I'm so sorry if that's your scenario. And for those of you that find yourself in a situation, let's look at the spiritual values when those are different. What do you do if the values are different in the other home? I think there's some things you can do and there's some things that you can't do. Again, your power is in your influence, and so you do what Deuteronomy 6 says, and you put the commands on your heart. You live the godly life. You demonstrate that for your kids. You show them that it's real for you. That's the first place that it always starts. You can inculcate them with truth, teach, talk about God, spend time in the Word, doing activities, sharing with them why you believe what you believe. Nope, this is the reason we don't go see that movie. And let me tell you why. Because we're trying to fill our minds with good things. We're trying to transform our minds, as Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And so we're not going to fill our minds with that. And that's why we've decided that, no, you can't see that movie, and we're not going to go see it either. And you walk that stuff out. You're also going to inoculate. All of us have to inoculate the world against our kids in some form or fashion. They grow up, and if you haven't had teenagers yet, and they go into the world, and the world has tremendous influence on their life in the form of peers and friends and the activities that they're involved in. And they're going to be exposed to things that we're not comfortable with. And so what do? At home, we try to teach, and we try to inoculate that. We try to talk about, some people in the world think, some people believe this. This is something that you will find in your friendships with others at school. Here's how I would encourage you to think about that. Here's what God's Word has to say about that. Jesus did this on the Sermon on the Mount. You have heard that it was said, there's the world's point of view, but I say to you, here's what the truth that I want you to hang on to when you enter into that world. Now, for some kids, the world is their other home. And when they go to Dad's house, they are going to be able to watch those R-rated movies, and they are going to be exposed to stuff, and it's going to just kill your heart because it's such a contrast from what you want to teach them. The hard part and the delicate part here is saying to them, look, I realize that the other home will let you do X, Y, or Z, and we don't. And I know that that's really difficult for you, and I'm wondering how you're going to hang on to truth when you're over there. Now, I want to point out something. This is asking your child to choose. The hidden message in what I just said was, our truth is a better way of life. And we hope that you'll hold on to that and carry it with you to the other home. You have to decide when and how you make that overt. I think a dialogue and questions and tell me, what are you going to do when this comes up for you next time? Let me see if we can help you have a plan to help you implement while you're over there in that other home. I think those are helpful conversations to have. You got to draw some lines somewhere about how often and how much, and if it sounds like you're beating down the dad and the other, like you got to walk that delicate tightrope, and it's not easy. But you are trying to help prepare your kids to do life. I think you can have an expectation. Hey, look, we don't let you watch that here. I don't want you watching it over there. I think you can teach that and you can have some expectation of that, but you also need to know that that's a really, really tough thing. Because if dad's watching and everybody else is watching, it's really hard for a child to turn away from that. And that leads me to the last point, is that sometimes kids have to try on the values of the other home in order to just see and feel and taste, and you won't feel good about it. And sometimes they prodigal pretty far. And you never stop pursuing, you never stop talking and teaching, and you continue to live the life. I have this belief that not everybody comes full circle as soon as we want them to, but I do believe very strongly that grace wins. And if that's your situation, and it is a really, really hard one, never stop pursuing. Don't make guilt trips out of it, but continue to try to do everything you can to equip them for doing life. Okay, I just threw a lot of stuff at you. We just talked about attachment loss and loyalty and parenting, and there were implications for all of that. So I just want you to take a minute and turn. Maybe this is a couple time conversation. Maybe this is a table conversation. I'll let you decide how you want to do that. But maybe you just turn to the person you came here with tonight and just have a little one-on-one. What did you just hear? What did I just hear? What are the implications for us and our family and life? I'll give you a few minutes. Ready, set, go. I hope this is a beginning of a journey for you, that you'll just continue to try to be Stepfamily smart, which means read, study, watch, talk with other people. If you enjoyed anything in the small group discussion time, if you found any value with other people going, yeah, that's exactly what it's like for me, then, this church has a ministry, and small groups are available in different places around this city, and I would encourage you to make that happen. And some people, you just need to start it yourself. Invite 2 couples over and sit in your living room and talk. You can read a book and discuss it. You can find ways of doing that. Don't walk this journey all on your own. I'll share a couple of resources with you in a minute, but I did get a few questions before we started tonight, and there were a couple about former spouses and difficult situations in particular, so I feel the need to just kind of address a couple of these. How would you handle a situation where an ex-spouse is teaching the children to lie or to do something that is inappropriate? Well, there's 2 parts to that, right? First of all, your child. Just because you're pretty convinced, obviously, it's coming from the other home, the other home's kind of putting them up to that or encouraging that, they don't get a pass. If a friend at school told your kid to lie to you, you wouldn't care who told them to do it, right? They don't get a pass, so there's a consequence for them lying to you. You deal with your kid the way you need to deal with your kid. Set boundaries for that and have a consequence for that. The other part of this is talking to the other home. Now, we all know if they were nice, you might still be married. Right? If you're a cooperative colleague, those of you that rated yourselves as cooperative colleagues with the other homes, you can actually have a phone call. Hey, just wanted you to know, Johnny came over, kind of got a whopper gone, let me tell you about the lie he told and what happened at school today, and he got trouble. And the other home will go, oh, geez, okay, I'm with you on this. I'm going to clamp down, you clamp down. And you can actually have that decent conversation about co-parenting. Others in this room, you just went, yeah, right, that's never going to happen. And if I say anything to the other home, they're just going to fire back and it's going to be another war. Right, it probably will. But it still shouldn't stop you from saying something. To just say, look, I know this is happening. Please don't do that. Here's an interesting little response. And this is in the book, The Smart Stepfamily, by the way, in the middle of the co-parenting chapter. I know you, talking to the former spouse, I know you would never try to hurt our children. But when you teach them to lie, you're putting them between us. You're asking them to choose. That puts them in the middle of a loyalty bind, and that is a deep psychological wound for a child. You are hurting our child. Please don't do that anymore. Now, my guess is that falls flat. They just go, nah, 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 and they don't care what you said. But maybe, just maybe, that just sticks in the back of their head a little bit and makes them think twice. Might be worth it. A related question that somebody had is, how do you handle a situation where an ex-spouse talks poorly about your household and what's going on in terms of the relationships? That again is another situation where I know you would never intentionally put our child in between us to do something that's harmful or hard for them, but this does do that. Please stop. I would appreciate it. We won't do that toward you. We'd appreciate it if you wouldn't do that toward us. If it's something that is malicious, if it's something that is harmful, then that rises to a level of, do I need to consult with an attorney? Do we need to do something about this in courts? And that leads to court battles, and that is always a really delicate situation. And I always encourage people to think long and hard, pray long and hard before you make that decision, because once you go to court, things generally get worse before they, if ever, get better. But that sometimes is exactly what you got to do, right? And so don't be afraid of taking action, and don't be afraid of standing up for what's decent. just do so in a way, and here's the odd part, in a way that's gentle. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. One of the fruit of the Spirit is a very powerful way when you set a boundary, when you say no, when you say, please don't do that. If you do it with gentleness, it makes it far more likely that maybe they receive the message. If you do it in anger, then they can just say, you're just angry, and they can discount the message. You do it with gentleness, and all of a sudden, maybe something sticks. We're working hard to try to help churches. We do a summit on Stepfamily ministry every year. We're going to be in Chicago. If you're interested in learning more about stepfamilies, we'd love to have you join us. We put out 3 new books in the last 6 months. In Their Shoes is all about understanding what it's like to be a kid after your parents divorce, and now one of them has married again, and you now have a step-parent. The financial guide book that I wrote with a financial planner and an estate attorney. We pooled all our collected. It sounds like the beginning of a really bad joke. A therapist and a financial planner and a estate attorney walk into a bar. That's what we produced, right? There's that book. Building Love Together is the new one. It's just out, and we're really excited about what all that does. And we've added that then to the whole bank of resources. Don't ever let anybody tell you there's nothing out there for Christian stepfamilies. That's not true. There's a whole lot out there. And there's podcasts, and there's the live stream event coming up, Blended and Blessed, Saturday, April 25th. Would love to have you keep learning, keep being stepfamily smart, and bring somebody along with you. This is where I live, Family Life Blended. Come see us, all right? We're going to have a word of prayer as we close. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be with you again.